Hi everyone, this is Carol Marie. Thank you for tuning in to MFG. Today, we are going to be talking about food. As you can see, I have some food on my table, a variety. The most common food groups that we eat on our daily diets are called macronutrients. And macro meaning that we need them in large quantities, and nutrients. So there are three main macronutrients that I'm going to be talking about, and they are protein, carbohydrates, and fats. So why are some food better to eat over another? Why is it better to eat a piece of apple, for example, over a piece of cake? Well, let's break down some of these macronutrients. First, we're going to start with protein. So, protein has an enormous function. It is considered our body's building block. Protein helps promote growth, repair, build tissue, and it also helps strengthen our immune system. For an active person, it is important to eat sufficient amount of protein in order to build muscles. For examples, a lot of athletes and bodybuilders consume enough protein in order for them to grow their muscles or to stay lean. As a rule of thumb, it is recommended that active people eat about 1 gram of protein per pound. If we don't eat proteins, or at least enough of it when we are active, what happens is that our body will pull the energy from our muscle tissue, thus making our muscle less leaner, and also we lose some muscle mass instead of building them. Some examples of protein, you might see it here on my table. I don't have a lot, but you can get protein from red meat, from chicken, from eggs, fish, shellfish. You can also get them from beans, some legumes, some nuts, and a whole variety of things. So, proteins are really important. When we go out to the grocery stores, it is important that we read food labels so that way we can get an idea of how much nutrients there are in the food products that we pick. Alright, let us move on to our next macronutrients. And this is carbohydrates. Carbohydrates is our body's main source of energy. And some people may also give it connotation that it really adds to weight. But there are really some good carbohydrates out there. There are two main groups of carbohydrates that I will be touching upon, and they are simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates. But I will also be touching on refined carbohydrates. So let's start with simple carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates, in other words, simple sugars, are carbohydrates that are found mostly in fruits and in some milk or milk products. Simple carbohydrates can also be found in some refined food. Like, for example, you can find them in some sugar, table sugar, molasses, agave, syrup, high fructose corn syrups, and things like that, which kind of are bad for our body when we consume them in big amounts, and also when we consume them frequently. So simple carbohydrates, they tend to break down into glucose at a shorter period of time, and it tends to give the body this sugar spikes because they break down a lot faster, and also it gives the body the tendency to feel hungry sooner than complex carbohydrates. So complex carbohydrates, unlike simple carbohydrates, are carbohydrates that are mainly found in vegetables, in beans as well, nuts and legumes, and they are generally high in fibers, they're high in vitamins, they're high in antioxidant, minerals, and a lot of other things, just like simple carbohydrates, which are also high in vitamins, minerals, and a lot of other nutrients. But unlike simple carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, they tend to break down a lot longer. Our body don't tend to experience these sugar spikes that you would typically see in simple carbohydrates. Like, for example, complex carbohydrates can be found in oatmeals. It can be found in whole grains, potatoes. You can also find them in vegetables like broccoli. You can find them in avocados. So complex carbohydrates, because they break down a lot longer compared to simple carbohydrates. The complex carbohydrates tend to give us a sense of fullness longer than simple carbohydrates. But what are refined carbohydrates? So I don't have a lot of refined carbohydrates on my table. I have one over here. It's like udon. But refined carbohydrates are generally carbohydrates that have been broken down, like their minerals and their fibers and their vitamin have been broken down or basically stripped away. And because of that, it tends to give us very similar to what simple carbohydrates would do. Like, it would give us this sugar spikes. It will give us this, the body releases sugar a lot sooner because carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates, are broken down a lot faster. And when we eat more of the refined carbohydrates, because they break down sooner, we tend to feel hungry sooner, and it can actually contribute to overeating, and overeating with time can contribute to obesity, and obesity with time, it can also contribute to diabetes as well as a lot of other diseases. So those are just a simple overview of carbohydrates and proteins. Now, let's talk about some fats. So fats has gotten a bad name out there, but fats is equally important as carbohydrates and proteins. We need them for many functions, and some of its main basic functions is that fats actually help absorb minerals and vitamins, and they help maintain our temperature, our body temperature, but also they help us with providing us with energy. There are a lot of different kinds of fats out there, but I'll be talking about unsaturated, saturated, and trans fat. But let's start with saturated fats. So saturated fats are generally found in meat products. And also there are some plants that contain saturated fat, like coconut oil, palm oil, and also you can find them in milk products like in butter. In general, saturated fat at room temperature, they are solids. And studies have shown that eating too much of the saturated fat over a long period of time could actually increase the bad cholesterol, the LDL, which stands for low density lipoprotein. And as we know, that cholesterol levels, they do contribute to the development of heart diseases. So how about unsaturated fats? So unsaturated fats are mostly found in food such as in seeds, in nuts and vegetables, and in general, unsaturated fat, they are liquid at room temperature, just like, for example, this olive oil. Other examples of unsaturated fats our fats from canola oil, from pumpkin seeds, from avocado oil, and a lot of other things. And unsaturated fat, unlike the saturated fat, actually helps increase the good cholesterol, HDL, which stands for high density lipoprotein. So trans fat are probably the fat that most doctors will tell us to avoid, because trans fat is one of the biggest contributor of the development of increasing the bad cholesterol, our LDL. And some examples of these trans fats, you can find them in fried food like fried chicken, donuts, frozen pizzas, creamer that is non-dairy in ice cream. Just, food that generally have a lot of preservatives and have longer shelf life as well. Here's a list of foods under the 3 macro categories in this video. It will also be in the description below. As you can see, there's a lot of really good foods out there. But we also live in a society where we have a lot of food that are processed food. All of these food groups have very important functions in our body. It's just a matter of eating them in moderation. And nowadays, there are a lot of websites and there are a lot of apps and videos that can assist us in guiding us in the direction where we become aware of the food options that we pick. And there are also apps out there that can help you count your calories if you would like. But for me, as a general rule of thumb, what I like is when I look at my plate, about 50% of it is greens, 30% about protein, and then 20% of it is carbohydrates. And I like to stick to the complex carbohydrates like brown rice or sweet potatoes. And if I do eat pastas, it's pastas that are like whole grains, and there are a ton of different kinds of pastas out there. Pastas that are made of beans and a lot more nutritious than the standard just white pasta. So I hope that this channel will give you some insight about foods and how important it is to combine proper eating with exercise. And in this channel, I also have some exercise videos. Feel free to check them out. And if you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Thank you.